Good morning, class. Once again, this is PLARHG History and Geography. My name is Jonathan, and I'm a teacher. So this week, we are starting week 4 of the course. So week 4. We're moving along, and we're at week 4, class 1. Again, thank you for all those who are listening and watching and tuning in. For those who can hear me, that's great. You can always call in and listen in. For those who can see my smartboard screen even better, that's fantastic. Again, on my smartboard screen, I have the study guide cover page where I list all my contact information, my email and such, my cell number, my fax number and such. So please get a hold of me if you have any questions. I'm starting to get students emailing me asking their marks and asking for feedback and asking questions, which is great. So please keep doing that. That's fantastic. Okay, again, there's many ways you can get a hold of me. And yeah. So we're moving along. So like I said last week, my goal for this week is to finish off PLARHG history, which is the first half of this course. And then next week, hopefully we'll start a geography section. Okay, so history is almost done. So if history is not your favorite subject, that's okay. We'll be starting geography shortly, but yeah, hopefully we'll finish off PLARHG history this week and we'll move on to geography next week. Okay, so remember this is week 4, class 1, okay? Alright, I just want to point out something. So if you go to the nnec.on.ca homepage, if you go on the very top, on the top left tab, you'll see Wasa Distance Education. Okay. Um, if you want to see my smartboard and see what I'm circling, what I'm underlining, and all my pictures I got, you can download the Bridget software, okay, which is under the Wasa Distant Education tab. Okay, you can click on that, download that software, and you should be able to see my smartboard screen and my slides. Okay, and that way you can follow along as well. Okay, if you have your laptop and your computer with you. Okay, if you don't, that's okay. I know some learning center are closed this week due to hunting week, so which is all right. Okay, so again, like I said, I always post my lessons onto my YouTube channel at jhillwasa, and and I noticed that some people are going back and watching again since they didn't have a chance to, I don't know, be up this early this morning and watch my lessons, but that's okay. So remember that my lessons will always be on YouTube, something that you can always refer back and go back to, okay? Another thing I want to point out is that on the NNEC homepage, okay, which is www.nnec.on.ca, again, on the very top left tab on the WASA Distance Education, you can click under Archive Classes. Okay, Archive Classes. Okay, so let's click on that. Okay, so if you click on that, it has all WASA education classes lessons posted. Okay, so it's not just with PLAR, history, and geography. You can also check out like all the other PLARs, English, math, science, or any other courses you may be taking this term. So for example, if you go under term 1, September 8th to November 5th, you can check out your courses and see who your teacher are and what class you're taking. So for myself, you want to check out PLAR History Geography. You see my name Jonathan. You click on Tuesday or Thursday. I don't think it really matters. And you can also download um, my lessons. Like you won't be able to see what I'm have on my smartboard screen, but you can download the MP3 file of my lessons, and then you can just listen to my lessons that way too. Okay, so there's many options if you are unable to, attend classes or go to your learning center. If your learning center is closed, perhaps. One, you can always check out my YouTube page channel and see and listen, or you can download under the Wasau Radio Archive classes and just listen to the lesson again. Okay, so there's many options that you can go back and refer to if you can't attend this lesson. But I highly encourage to all my students, that you attend class as much as possible whenever you can. I know PLARHG History and Geography is early in the morning, but I really recommend that you all come participate. That way you can ask live questions and such as well. Okay, so that's that. All right, let's continue off. So yeah, we are starting lesson 3 today. Okay, I'm going to start lesson 3 today. We are going to start the Quiet Revolution section, and then on Thursday we'll do the Free Trade and the Canada Act section. Okay, so there's two more main topics that's going to be covered in lesson 3, which takes place from the 1960s to the early 2000s. Okay, I asked last class what was kind of like in the 60s. I didn't answer that question yet, but I'm going to answer that question today. However, like always, let's backtrack a little bit. Let's quickly review what I covered on Friday during our makeup class. I know Friday morning we didn't really get much students out listening, so I'm gonna go back and take some time and go over those materials, because there are important materials. Like I said, they'll be on your assignments again, and you might see them again on your tests. Alrighty. Okay, so for those who didn't get a chance to watch my lessons or tune into my lessons on Friday, what we talked about was the United Nations, which is the UN. We also talked about NATO. We also talked about NORAD. Okay, for those who did tune in and listen to my lesson and go back to my YouTube channel, this is a bigger review. Okay, it's great to always do review, refresh your memory, refresh your knowledge. Again, you can always ask a question again if you have any questions. Okay. Okay, so let's do a bit of review, and then we'll move along. So last week on Friday, we talked about the United Nations. The United Nations. Okay, so I'm gonna put that in blue today. Okay, so the United Nations, I'm underlining in blue. The UN. Okay, the UN for short. Okay, so what the UN was that it was again another organization between Great Britain, United States, China, Canada, and other nations as well. Um, it's similar to the League of Nations, as you recall from what we talked about it during the First World War. Okay, the League of Nations. So what the United Nations was created, the UN was created, was that the League of Nations wasn't really successful in achieving its goal and in achieving its purposes. Therefore, the UN, the United Nations, was created. Okay, but so the main function of the United Nations was to prevent further war. Okay, same goals, same purposes as the League of Nations, as you recall, but the UN is like a step further. Okay, not only did they wanted to prevent further chaos or conflict and war, they also want to improve the quality of life in all nations. Okay, um, some nations are, they're lacking in terms of like resources and economy. Therefore, they want to improve the quality of life in other nations as well. They also want to work towards human rights for all people, so that everyone's equal and treated fairly without, discrimination and unfair treatment. Okay, so these are just some examples that the UN, the United Nations, the main functions and main goals. So something that you need to remember and for you to recall for your assignments is that the United Nations, the UN, main function, main goal is to prevent further war, improve quality of life in all nations, and to work towards improving human rights in all people. Okay, so Canada is a part of the United Nations. Okay, Canada is a part of the UN. Canada's main goal and part of the UN is peacekeeping. Peacekeeping. Okay, so what peacekeeping is, basically it's like civil power, disaster relief, and search and rescue. That's mainly what peacekeeping is all about. Basically, Canada's goal for peacekeeping is to maintain peace. Uh, make sure there's no conflict going on in other nations. Okay, so we're just there to maintain peace. So if I scroll down, you can see from my images from last class again, you got a individual man here with the UN hat. Has a little Canadian flag on it. Okay, represents Canadian. This image right here, as you see, you got some Canadian peacekeepers in a nation that's having some trouble in terms of its injuries and its disasters. So Canada's there to rescue, provide aid, supplies, um, and maintain peace. Okay, so this is the main source of Canadian pride that we have in Canada. Is that we go to different nations, we help them out, and this is something that we really are proud of as Canadian. Okay, so this is what the UN and United Nations is all about. Okay, are there any questions? Again, you can, if you're listening through your Learning Center, you can just shout out a question. You can type your answer if you're on this Bridget software, and you can also write your answer on on my screen somehow. That's not a function way, not a way as well. Okay, if you have that capability or you have that way of doing it. Okay. Okay, so now I'm gonna quickly go over NATO. NATO. Okay, so NATO and NORAD, the two things I'm going to talk about right now. All these, the UN, NATO, and NORAD, are all organizations that was created after the Second World War in terms of, maintaining peace, increasing our defense purposes, or such. Okay, so these are just some organizations that are created. Okay, so NATO. You'll see this fancy term again. Okay, so capital NATO, NATO, little acronym. So make sure you understand and know what NATO stands for. Okay, NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. You can all say it with me if you want. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so make sure you remember that what NATO stands for. Okay, so what is NATO? So NATO is an international organization developed in 1949, and we still have NATO today. Okay, we still have it today. So NATO basically says that if the United States or any other European countries that are part of the treaty are attacked, others will come and aid. Okay, so for my little diagram here, you can see that Canada, United States, Iceland, United Kingdom, France, Portugal, Spain, Turkey, and so forth, are all part of NATO. Okay, all part of NATO. If one of these countries are attacked, the rest of the NATO treaty countries, nations, will come in and help out. Will come in and help out. That's basically what it was. Okay, so just some further background content details that it's not in your textbook, but I'm just going to provide was that the Western countries look to develop their own defenses. Okay, it's like a provision, a preparation made in case of conflict. If something happened with like Russia or United States, because during this time period, Russia and United States are two superpowers. A lot of tension, a lot of conflict going back and forth. Like I said, it was signed in April 1949. It was basically an alliance made up of Christian and democratic countries. They support to be more alliance against Soviet Union. Certain countries are extended so that they can be a part of NATO, whereas other countries are discouraged or not allowed to join NATO. And such. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Again, I had a question early on this week was that some of the content, the background information I was giving out wasn't in your textbook, which is correct. So all the materials on my smartboard screen, all the contents, all the words you see are all the same as your textbook. Okay, however, However, the images and the layout and the format and the organizations of my slides are slightly different from your textbook. Okay, so just keep that in mind, okay? Just because you're seeing something on like my YouTube or on my slides, like, hey, I didn't see that image in the textbook. Where'd you get that from? Okay, this is just something different. Okay, however, all the materials, all the contents, are all outlined in your textbook. Okay, so don't be shocked or be like, oh, I didn't get that same textbook or what version are you using? Okay, it's all the same. Okay, nothing has been changed, nothing has been modified. Okay, so if you have the PLARHG History and Geography textbook, you're in good hands. Okay, all the answers, all the information is all in your textbook. Okay, so please, just because you're listening and watching my lessons, doesn't mean that you don't have to read the textbook. Please go back and read the textbook. Okay, there's lots of key information in there that I'm going to briefly touch and talk upon, but it's really important that you go back and read it again because all the answers are in your textbook. Okay, I just provide extra details of background information about certain topics. That's all it is. Okay, just want to make that clear. So that's basically what NATO is. Okay, so basically what my class needs to remember that you need to know what NATO stands for, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Basically, if the United States or any other European country was attacked, other countries will come in and help out and aid as well. That's NATO. Okay, NORAD. NORAD. Okay, so capital NORAD, little short form. So you also need to know what NORAD stands for. So NORAD stands for the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Okay, you can say it with me. Okay, so North American Aerospace Defense Command. Okay, if you can't remember that, that's okay. It's all in your textbook. It's bolded, so you can't miss it. You still can't see it, still can't find it. Well, let me help you out. It's on page 17. Okay, it's right there. It's underneath NATO. So page 17. It's where I'm at right now. If you're following along in your textbook. Okay, again, this is just a quick review on some of the materials. Okay. So what was NORAD? What was NORAD? So NORAD is basically an agreement between the United States and Canada. It was formed in 1958. Again, we still have NORAD today. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker signed it when he was Prime Minister. So basically what NORAD was that it was, like I said, it was an agreement between the United States and Canada, a modern man-made object in space. It provides a warning against plane and missile attacks from the Soviet Union. Okay, so like I said, during this time period, the Soviet Union and the USSR were really aggressive, and they were launching like missiles and other technology into space. And Canada and the United States are really concerned because of this. That way, we formed NORAD. NORAD. Okay, so we got Fort Hope tuning in at the Learning Center. So good morning over there at Fort Hope. Can all my students hear me over there?
Yes.
Perfect. How are we doing over there today?
Good.
Excellent. Can I please ask you at the Learning Center right now at Fort Hope some names?
Delilah.
Delilah, perfect, Delilah. Anyone else?
It's just me.
Just you, perfect, excellent. Again, Delilah, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know, okay, Delilah?
Okay.
Perfect, thank you so much. So that was just a quick review of what we talked about last class. So I'm now gonna stop right there. And move on. Okay, it says go to assignment 6. So Delilah, have you started filling out some of the assignments for PLAR history? Delilah, are you still listening? Are you still there, Delilah?
Oh yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Delilah, have you started doing some of the assignments for PLAR history?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Are you on track with my pace? Are you currently working on assignment 6, or are you a bit behind?
Probably like a bit behind.
Bit behind? Okay, excellent. No worries, no worries. Again, um, you're going at your own pace, which is fantastic. Okay, so again, what I'm teaching right now, it's mainly for assignment 6 and for the next assignment. So I'm just going along and teaching. But again, if you want to stop me and if you want to ask any question about any assignments, please let me know and I can stop it. I can always go back and I will answer some of your questions. Okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Alright, so I'm not gonna quickly go over assignment 6 right now, because again, it's all in your student workbook. Okay, class? So I'm gonna fast forward and go to this page. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna start lesson 3 today. I'm gonna look at Canada, what it was like started in the 1960s, and our main topic that we're gonna focus on today is the Quiet Revolution. Okay, the Quiet Revolution. Okay, so for those who are listening and for Delilah or for Hope, I am on page 19 the of the textbook. Okay, if you want to follow along using textbook, I'm on page 19. Okay, so I posted a question: what was Canada like in the 1960s? Wow, what was Canada like in the 1960s? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you. So in the 1960s, um, again, it's a different time period. Um, it's about 20 years after the Second World War now. So what was kind of like in the 1960s? So this was in the 60s. It was a period of rejection of traditional values and establishment. People wanted to challenge authority. People wanted to challenge social inequality, and people wanted political change because that was what they really wanted to desire. Okay, that was what was kind of like in the 60s. Okay, so basically, for Canadians in the 60s, they challenged the status quo. They want to find their own voice so that they can begin to create their own Canada in a sense. Okay, so a lot of changes starting to happen in the 60s. Okay, a lot of rejection, a lot of stand up for their own rights and for stand up for what they believe in for their own voice. That was what the 60 was all about. So, for example, some examples I'm gonna talk about. This is not in your textbook, by the way. Just as some examples I'm gonna just say, just for some background knowledge, is that in the 1962, for example, the immigration policy was reformed, where Canada wanted skilled laborers, and they started to allow new immigrants into Canada from Asia. Uh, in 1966, for example, Canada had its own national health care, something that we have today, because we have like free healthcare. Well, it started in the 60s, it started in 1966. Again, also in 1966, Canada had its own pension plan. That was started out the pension plan. 1965, Canada had unrevealed its brand new flag, which is the flag we know as today, which is the red maple leaf. In 1969, for example, the criminal code was reformed. Okay, that was kind of changed. Abortion is now legalized in 1969. Okay, also in the 60s, there was some internal and external conflicts. Okay, so for internal conflicts, we had culture change. It was a period of, the hippies, the youth, and all that, where they want to escape from the social norms and start to change. Also in the 60s, there was external conflict. It's the period of the Cold War. Canada was involved in the Vietnam War during this time period. Even though Canada was officially neutral during the Vietnam War, but they were still helping out to an extent. So that's kind of an external conflict. So that's still a little background information of what was like Canada in the 60s. Okay, a lot going on, lots of changes started to begin. Okay. Alrighty. Lesson 3. Canada, 1960 to 2000. So again, like today, like I said, we're going to look at the Quiet Revolution. So for those who are interested in knowing your learning goals or your learning expectations, is that you will learn the term Quiet Revolution. Okay, so you'll this fancy term right here. You're gonna learn the Quiet Revolution. You're gonna learn what it means. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Quiet Revolution. And the reason for nationalism, why Quebec wants to be separated from Canada. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about Quebec. Quebec. Why they want to be different from Canada and why they want to be separated from Canada. And you'll also learn about Quebec moving towards independence. And we're going to define an organization called the FLQ. Okay, the FLQ. Okay, so these are your learning goals for today. Okay, so we're going to look at the Quiet Revolution, why Quebec wants to be different and separated, and we'll look at the organization, a terrorist group known as the FLQ. Okay. So basically, Quebec after the Second World War, um, Quebec became more modernized. Um, it created a nationalist ideology, which attracted Canada's attention. Um, During this time period, the 60s, so in Quebec, it was a time period of dramatic population increase. It also have economic growth, and it was also an increased employment opportunities as well. So from the earliest days of Canadian history, as we talked about, way back in like my Week 1 and such, we talked a lot about, English Canadians and French Canadians, how, during this time, during Canada, Canadian history, we have two ethnic groups in Canada. Okay, we've got the English and we've got the French. Um, as we recall back in World War One, there's a lot of conflict with the French Canadians as they didn't want to commit to go into war. Okay, they had different beliefs and values, differently compared to the English Canadians. Okay, so the French speaking and the English speaking Canadian had often disagreed about how Canada should be run and what it means to be Canadian. French Canadians have worried about English Canadians' influence on their culture and economy. Okay, so French had their own little culture, own little society, and own little beliefs, different from the English. Okay, so the French was always worried about how they would be influenced by the English. Okay, the French Canadians always want to be different and separated from the English. Whereas the English Canadian speaking population was the majority. So the French didn't want to be absorbed or be influenced by the English. Many Quebec citizens feel the best solution for Quebec would be to separate it from Canada and form its own nation. Okay, this is what most people in Quebec feel what they want to do. Okay, so again, a lot of different political beliefs during this time period. Again, French-speaking Canadians still want to be different, and because of that, they want to be their own separate nation. They want to be separated from Canada, the whole province of Quebec. Okay, so you can see on my little slide, there's a little province Quebec. Quebec is, the biggest province in Canada, is right beside Ontario. Okay, in terms of geography, if you're not sure where Quebec is, okay, so just Quebec. Okay. Like I said, again, it's all about nationalism. It's all about maintaining their culture, their religion. Um, it's all about the survival of the language, religion, culture, and separate identity. They don't want to be different. Okay, they don't want to be their own uh, distinct society. Is what we're talking about during this time period. So what happened was that um, prior to the 60s, Quebec, was ran by this was ran by a man named Maurice Duplessis. Maurice Duplessis. You'll see his name come up quite a bit. Okay, this fella right here, Maurice Duplessis. Him and his Union National Party was created. So during his time in power, he really encouraged French Canadian nationalism. Okay, the sense of nationalism. Okay, you'll hear me say this term a lot. Nationalism, nationalism. Okay, so this is basically what it means is that it's pride in one country, one region, and a province. You're taking pride in what you have. Based on your culture, um, what your nation has to offer, your identity. This is all about nationalism. Okay, you want to be different from everyone else. You have your own distinct identity, and you want to maintain that. Okay, this is what nationalism is all about. So what Duplessis wanted when he was the premier of Quebec during his time period, that he wanted private enterprise, he wanted American investment, he wanted low taxes, he wanted the Catholic Church, all establishment in order, small scale farmers, and opposed labor unions. Okay, so this is kind of beliefs um, almost like the English speaking Canadian society. Okay, this is what Duplessis wanted. Okay. So like I said, he wanted, he encouraged American and British and English Canadian investment in the Quebec economy. So I know a lot of American companies, a lot of British companies, a lot of English Canadian investments were, established in the Quebec economy. Okay, so as a result, French Canadian had to be able to speak English in order to obtain jobs in the province. Okay, this is what Maurice Duplessis wanted when he was the premier of Quebec during this time period. Okay, again, just some little images with Maurice Duplessis. Alright, so let's get to the Quiet Revolution. The Quiet Revolution. So Maurice Duplessis and his new party, Union Nationale, um, he wanted what was best for Quebec. He really wanted what was best for Quebec. Um, but after he died, after his death in 1959, the Quiet Revolution started again. Okay, you'll see me use this term again. The Quiet Revolution started. Okay, it really started in the 60s and it lasted between about 60 to 1966. Okay, so why was this revolution called the Quiet Revolution? Why was it called the Quiet Revolution? Well, from your textbook, as you can see from the slide, um, usually when we use the word revolution, we talked about, protesting, violence, weapons, guns, people getting hurt, people getting arrested, a lot of chaos. That's what we talked about, revolution. Um, the reason it was called a quiet revolution was that it was achieved. Okay, it was a quiet revolution because it was not achieved through guns and forces and violence, but through magazines, newspaper articles, and challenge political legislation. Okay, very important. I'm going to put a star beside it because you're going to see that again in your assignment. Okay, I believe an assignment will be like, what page or why was it called the Quiet Revolution? Okay, so the Quiet Revolution was not achieved through guns and forces, but it was achieved through people writing magazines, writing newspaper articles to challenge, to change political legislative. Okay, so the Quiet Revolution was basically a period of rapid, non-violent change responsible for the beginning of a modern and secularized Quebec. Okay, like I said, the French-speaking Canadian population wanted change. Okay, they wanted to maintain and protect. Okay, protect and promote the French culture. Okay, as you can see from the Canadian map, Quebec is one of the biggest and largest province. Okay, it's really big. It's bigger than most nations. So as a result, they wanted to have their own distinct culture. Okay, so Quebec had a distinct border, culture, language, and people. Therefore, they want to be felt they should be vote and leave Canada. Okay, the most people in Quebec, the French-speaking population, felt that they were discriminated against social, cultural, political, and economically. Remember how I talked about um, English-speaking Canadians are mainly dominant, and the French were like the minority groups. Okay, so that because of this, this is why Quebec as a province and their sense of nationalism and pride, they wanted to be separated from Canada, and Quebec wanted to be their own separate, distinct nation. Okay, um, so that's that. Also in 1965, the Canadian government revealed a new Canadian flag, something I talked about. Okay, new Canadian flag. They did this because they wanted to bring a sense of unity, unification towards Canada. But Quebec didn't want to be a part of that. Um, okay, that didn't really work out. Okay, so that's what the Quiet Revolution period was about. Like I said, it was achieved not through guns and forces, but achieved through magazines and newspaper articles. Okay, there was no violence. Okay, all right, moving along. All right, so the Quiet Revolution started with the election of John Lesage. Put his name. He was the premier of Quebec. This fella right here. So he promised change. He promised Quebec there will be more Quebec um, control. He will pass more laws to improve the quality of Quebec citizens. He wanted to take power away from the English, and he wanted to give it more to the French-speaking Canadians. Okay, so some of the changes he promoted was that he established the Ministry of Education. He reorganized school systems. The He achieved economic initiatives for francophones. He revised the labor code, public sector rights to vote, federal tax back to Quebec, and Quebec pension. Okay, so he really wanted to make it easier. He wanted to promote French culture in Quebec. Okay, so he made it easier for francophones to obtain loans to set up their own businesses. Okay, like I said, he Department of Education, the Ministry of Education. He changed the school system, so the courses that Quebec students have to take, made it easier for high school freeze. So these are some changes that John Lesage wanted to do. So again, I have a little link here. If you click on this link, it will take you to this website where it shows you all the different Canadian flags throughout time. So you may be wondering what was Canada flag like prior to 1965. Um, it looks like this. Okay, so a little neat little website. You can scroll through it. So this was the Canadian flag from 1957 to 65. You can scroll through this little website. It has like all the Canadian different flags. What it's kind of like as a nation during this time period. Okay, a lot of influence from the British Empire. Okay, because we're part of the British colony. Okay, so it's just a little neat little website. Okay, if you want to check it out. Okay, I'll link right there. All right. So as you recall, we are going to talk about the FLQ. Okay, the FLQ. Okay, this is still part of the Quiet Revolution. Okay, there's still part of changes and uproar and want change in Quebec during this time period. So what happened is that the FLQ, the Front de la Liberation du Quebec, make sure you remember that name. It's FLQ for short. So Front de la Liberation du Quebec. Again, if you're following your textbook, it is on page. It's on page 20. It's on page 20. Okay, so basically what happened is that, Quebec, like I said, Quebec and French-speaking English Canadian citizens really want change. They want change to happen now, and they want it to happen like quickly as possible. Okay, even though John Lesage, the Premier of Quebec, was smoking on this change, it wasn't happening quick enough to please the French-speaking citizens in Quebec. Okay, there's still a lot of tensions going on with the English and the French, and they still want to be separated from Quebec. So what happened was that FLQ, which is the French terrorist separatist group. So what they did was that they started to bomb and place explosive around the city of Montreal. So they'll stand up bombs and explosive around the city of Montreal. Okay, the FLQ, like I said, there were terrorist group using a lot of violence as their tactics in order to get their way of independence. Okay, so the FLQ, like I said, they set up bombs and explosive around the city of Montreal. The FLQ also used terrorist attacks to scare citizens, but they took the step even farther when the FLQ took their actions even farther by kidnapping key public figures such as James Cross, he was the British Trade Commissioner, and Pierre Laporte, he was the Deputy Premier of Quebec. Pierre Laporte was eventually killed by the FLQ, which led to Trudeau. So Pierre Trudeau, he was the Prime Minister during this time period. He invoked the War Measure Act in order to restore peace and order. Okay, so Pierre Laporte, this fellow right here, he was kidnapped by the FLQ and was eventually killed in mortar, and then which led to our Prime Minister during this time period, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, where he invoked the War Measures Act. Okay. So what was the War Measures Act? What was the War Measures Act? So this was the first time in history that the War Measure Act has been used during peaceful time. The War Measure Act allows the government to arrest and detain any suspect that seems to be involved that threats towards national security. Okay, so basically, like I said, the FLQ was like a terrorist group going around sending bombs, kidnapping people, scaring people. So Trudeau tried to use the War Measures Act. Like I said, it allows the government to arrest and detain any suspect that seems to be involved in threats towards national security. Trudeau began to pressure the press, began to take pressure from the press about the arrest of suspects and potential FLQ affiliates, which climaxed on the steps of Parliament Hill building. So I have a little neat video right here. It's on YouTube. I can post it again on my Facebook link page. If you click on this link, we're not gonna watch the video now because it's a pretty long video. But basically, if you click on this link, it'll take you to this YouTube CBC archives where it says "Just Watch Me." It's basically an interview where a press, he asked Trudeau questions about why did he decide to use or invoke the War Measures Act and such. Okay, so for those who don't have internet access or those who can't see the videos or can't watch videos, so I'm gonna briefly, state out the key points from this video. Okay, so basically, Tim Ruff, news reporter from CBC, he thrust a microphone in front of Trudeau and suggested that the government officials should leave themselves open to kidnapping and murder in the name of individual rights. Trudeau responded, "All I can say is go on and bleed. It is more important to keep law and order in society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks." Then the CBC reporter, Tim Ruff, then challenged Trudeau by saying, "At any cost? How far would you go?" Basically, what Trudeau did, that he smiled and said, "Well, just watch me." Okay, that's basically what the interview was like. Um, so again, if you're on your own time when you have like nothing to do and you want to check it out, you can check out this link, watch this little interview between Tim Ruff, CBC reporter, and Trudeau talking about the War Measures Act. Okay, so that's that. Okay, are there any questions about the FLQ? Any questions? Like I said, FLQ stands for the Frontier Liberation du Quebec. What you need to remember is that they're a little terrorist group, and they felt that using bonds was the only way to get Quebec's independence. Okay. Like I said, on my next slide, Trudeau used the War Measures Act. He detained and searched people, which is important to note because if you recall and you remember, under your personal and legal fundamental rights as a citizens under the Canadian Charter, you do not have the people cannot just arrest and detain you without a cause. Okay, so this is kind of controversial why the War Measure Act and why it was used, and a bunch of mixed conflicts. And some people agree with it, some people disagree with it. Because, like I said, under the Canadian Charter rights, we do have legal rights not to be searched and detained and such. Okay. Um, with the War Measures Act, so basically what happened during the Quiet Revolution was that, Quebec citizens started to realize that, violence wasn't the way. Quebec decided that peaceful means of independence was needed. So if they wanted to achieve their independence, they would have to use peaceful means. So basically, all this it led to Rene Lévesque. He was now the new premier of the Parti Québécois party. So this fellow right here, he was now in charge of Quebec. So basically what happened is that afterwards there was like a huge referendum vote where people voted whether or not Quebec should be a part of Canada or should Quebec be separated from Canada and be its own distinct society or nation. Well, we voted and the vote came out was that most people said no. No, in terms of Quebec should not be its own distinct society and that should not be separated from Canada. Okay, so that was the Quiet Revolution period. Again, on my next slide, you can now do assignment 7. Okay, really short assignment. It's only out of 8 marks. It mainly just deals and talks about, the Quiet Revolution. So out of 8 marks. So question number 1 states, provide specific details to describe the Quiet Revolution. Why was the revolution necessary to the people of Quebec? And what did various politician leaders do in support of this revolution? Ooh, big question. 5 marks. So basically, we're given details about the Quiet Revolutions. So basically, it says, why was the revolution necessary for the people of Quebec? Okay, so why did people, the French, English-speaking Canadians, want to have a revolution in Quebec? What made them want to start this change? Okay, and then ask you, what did various politician leaders, okay, so we're going to talk about, a couple of the Quebec premiers, okay, such as, John Lesage, Maurice Duplessis, and such, for example. And what did they do in order to support this revolution? Okay. So it's out of 5 marks. So, okay, remember, right? The more detail you provide, the better your mark will be. Okay, so much detail as possible. And the next question was basically about the FLQ. So what was the FLQ? And we described it as an organization. So basically, what was FLQ? What did they stand for? And what was the purposes? Name 2 things. Okay, name 2 things the FLQ was responsible for doing. Okay, remember, right? So for example, the FLQ was a terrorist group. They did a lot of bombing and used a lot of terrorist tactics and violence, kidnapping. Okay, so those are just some of the responsibilities of what the FAQ was doing. Okay, again, out of 3 marks, and boom, 2 questions for that assignment. Okay, short and simple assignment, but it required lots of details, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm gonna stop it here for today. So tomorrow, with that